What's up,
Welcome.
Carlos?
How are you?
Good, good. How's it going?
Good. Welcome to the Museum of Graffiti's Daily Artist Talk. As you know, we've been doing these talks to connect with our community and as well give us a chance to kind of survey one another in our works and our ideas over this period while we can.
Right.
So, Abstract, before we get into it, I want to read some of your background to folks, okay?
All right. Thanks for having me. Sure.
You're more than welcome. So Abstract is a Cuban-American artist whose family came to the USA as exiles from Cuba during the 60s. And you're an original Miami-Dade boy. As it said, you're a local boy. You're like born and bred here, you're the real deal.
Born and raised.
Yeah, and so drawing from your background in graffiti, Abstract's work combines realism with the obscure, giving rich color, geometry to recognizable forms, shapes, and letter structures. His ideas recreate how images are perceived and often bring dimension with addition to sculptural elements, which I really like. We'll review some of that. And Abstract works can be, of course, found in murals throughout Miami, as well as galleries. Abstract. So let's just start and not start at the beginning, because as we were talking earlier, I found you really intriguing as a contemporary artist. Though you're known for a lot of other things, your work transcends what we know of you. So, but we're going to talk a little bit about that, right? Because you are a writer from Miami. Tell me a little bit about the early days of writing in Miami.
Well, I could say I'm like, I was compared to a lot of my peers. I was a little newer, but like I was still in the generation that I wasn't personally on the internet, so I didn't have the internet influence. It was more like influence from what you would see in abandoned buildings, pennants, books, and magazines. Even though there was websites and stuff out there, I didn't really get my first computer till about 2007 or 6 when I got my first computer. So late in the game with the computer. But early days, like for me, my early days was like the pennant, like the first stadium I painted in was Miami Stadium, which is torn down, was in Alapata. It was a really dope spot.
What writers were you writing with?
Oh, well, that was like my boys that were TSC PG, which was like Top Skills Crew, which all those guys ended up being MSG later on. But a lot of times I painted alone. But if I did, later on gravitate towards painting with people, was with the TSC homies like Y and Quake and Adam and all those guys that all became MSG later on.
And MSG is synonymous with Miami, especially in the Wynwood area. And it's changing, isn't it? And, I added this video to discuss change, right? You're seeing both the culture change, but you're also seeing Wynwood change. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that, the first piece, I used to see Wynwood when I would be going. My father lived on the beach, so I kind of grew up between Kendall and Miami Beach. I didn't go to school at Miami Beach, but I had way more freedom to move around and hang out there. So I used to see a lot of graffiti going to and from the beach, being on the beach, and driving through Wynwood and like the all around Overtown area downtown, where a lot of the really good productions were out in the street. And it's always been changing. Wynwood, even when I started painting there, it was already changing, I would say nobody could really predict the change that it would have now back in the 90s, but I wasn't really around for that. But I've seen so much change in the last 10 years. So, it's inevitable. Miami's still a baby. It's only about 120 something years old, like 25, 26 years old. So it's going to change a lot more, so.
And it's also forcing you to change, perhaps.
Yeah.
But one of the things we were discussing was that there was a period where you stopped writing and started focusing on your career as an artist, as a commercial artist.
Yeah, I moved out of my house while I was still in high school. So I was like, all right, I had like part-time jobs here and there jumping around, but I was like, man, I don't want to just do that, and I wasn't going to school because I was like paying rent, and I was about to have my son. I was like 19 years old, which is like the best thing that ever happened to me, right? And I was like putting my work on t-shirts, so I was like taking what I knew was spray paint and acrylic and like stenciling it onto t-shirts and selling them in the street. Memorial weekend down here was really big, And we were young. We were like 19, 20 years old. So we were like, all right, let's go hit the street with trash bags. And we were selling T-shirts and taking custom orders and say, oh, we're going to drop them off by your hotel at this time, you know. So we were just doing T-shirts with like Krylon and like white tall tees. And man, we would sell them on the street for like 25 a pop, or like if you're gonna buy 5 or 6. So we would have people, you know, we would run into all kinds of people being on Miami Beach. So it would,
Right.
the shirts would
That was
end
the
up.
genesis, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
genesis of the Abstract brand, or
Yeah.
the name Abstract you were mentioning, because you were doing some shirts for Fat Joe and stuff as well. But I want to focus on something very interesting about your work that's notable about you in Miami when you walk around, especially Wynwood, and it's the eyes. And the eyes, as we often say, are the windows to the soul. Tell me why the eye? Why do we see so many eyes returning in your work?
If you look at like even my really old stuff, I mean, I was really into drawing and painting and stuff even before I got into graffiti. I mean, my whole life been drawing and painting, right? So even if you look at my old work, when I would start drawing a character or something, I'd always start with the eyes, always. And over the years, you know, I would just start doing that with like I always noticed whenever I was doing a character with Can, it was always easier for me to like lay the eyes out and then build the head from around it, which is probably not the proper way to do it, right? Because I wasn't traditionally trained, and like I got like shunned or like for that sometimes, you know, like, oh, this guy was not traditionally trained, you know. I actually like I was told this by like a professor at Dash, the school. I went for like an orientation, which is like an art and design school. And I remember them telling me, like, they showed us, hey, like there's an eye, draw your eye in the mirror. And I just kind of like try to show off and do like a stylistic eye. And then telling me like, this is graffiti, this is not going to get you anywhere. So I remember going back and telling my parents, like, I'm not going to that school. I'm not going to wake up at 5 in the morning, take the train to Metro Rail to the bus, and then bus to school just to be taught by this guy that's near like me in orientation. But the eyes, I always feel like people gravitate and it catches your attention. And it's almost like, you know, when I'm doing a mural, it's something that I kind of throw up a little faster. So if I'm traveling and I want to do something where I just want to do like something with a lot of movement and style around the eyes, you know, and I can gravitate like all your attention to the focal point, which is the eyes.
Tell me about this mural with the heart and the eyes embedded into the heart.
Okay,
with the 2 portraits.
So this was a piece done about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years now, in Israel, and this was on the northern Israel. So this is like the border between Lebanon and Israel, and I wanted to do something there that's, you know, it was my style, but I wasn't trying to, you know, paint on choose a side of the wall to be on, right? Because a lot of people might see that as a political thing. This was with Artists for Israel, but I was not trying to be like this, you know, political tool to be like, I'm on this side. It was more for like, you know, if you see I have the children on the wall, and there's the children that live in the neighborhood. So instead of them driving through, they see this concrete structure that's like a symbol of division, you know, something that shows like unity. So you see like one child and this other child, and it could be a kid from either side of the wall, you know, where all these soldiers are posted up. If you look to the right, or maybe it's the left on your screen, that's where the soldiers are posted. So it's just something that kind of like, you know, bring some peace to the neighborhood, do something positive, and still put my style into the wall. With the heart, you know, signifying love, and like dope colors like blues and teals, and like real peaceful, you know, let me see, it's kind of blurry, but yeah, that's the piece.
Yeah, one of the things that I like about the power of mural making, whether it's graffiti, style writing, or portraiture and things like that, it's how it brings a community together. It brings a sense of healing, right? A sense of how would you call it? Landmarking, let's just say, where people would always meet or take pictures.
Yeah, it's really great because, say, you know, they're like, oh, well, I was down there as a child. I remember seeing like, oh, there was this landmark. I remember there was a wall by the airport that was said Miami on it, which I think Revoke and Bino or some guys that were MSG did many years ago. But I always remembered it like a landmark. And then I would never even play handball at that court, but you would see it from the expressway, and it was like a landmark in my mind of Miami in that time when there was no sound walls or anything like that. So like it becomes like embedded into their minds, and they'll always remember it. Or you always have like the opportunity to go back and visit this place. You know, sometimes these walls don't last forever, but you know, the whole experience does. So you kind of have like a pass, and like you feel welcomed in that neighborhood when you go back. You kind of become part of their community and their everyday life in a way.
So this eye is ever present, and you know, it's in your work, it's in your contemporary work. And one of the things I want to segue into is you as a modernist painter and sculptor, and specifically with the sculptures, because they're very interesting to me, again, in terms of what you're attempting to do of lifting color into space or constructing color into space. Tell me about these works and how you came about this particular style of
Right.
taking these amorphic style shapes and painting them or constructing them in space.
Well, okay. So basically, like, it all comes from this obsession of like wanting to make your creations like an actual thing, right? So you have like a character or like a piece or anything, but you know, you always want to have it like in your hand, like to make it an actual thing, because then it's real. It's not just like like in a storybook where you see photos or whatever. You actually have this object, you bring it into existence, you know? So it's an actual object and it has its own life. And these pieces, these specific pieces, are just based off of like the movement and style of like my isms, right? So like I could take any of those shapes, any single one of those shapes individually, lay that one piece down, and I can make every letter of the alphabet off of that one shape or piece that you see on those sculptures. I can make a whole alphabet off of each one of those pieces. And so that's where you see like the influence of like my style, and like graffiti style and letter structure. It's all broken down into these pieces, and the movement and the shape and everything. I mean, those specific pieces were commissioned by Red Bull for a competition. It was like a worldwide competition, 4-on-4, with Neymar. It was like a soccer competition. So this was for the United States finals. So those were actually gifted to the winning teams, the men and the women's team, each one.
Did you pursue it? Did you pursue it after the project?
Yeah, so I was doing it beforehand, and then they chose like a couple artists to do different installations at the event, but they wanted to focus the event, you know, more around people who have their own approach to translating different things within the sport. So like my whole thing with these were there's like this golden sphere shape that's in it, which represents the ball, and then if you see the green and the white, it represents the pitch and the movement, you know. So like that could be like the movement of somebody's leg or the running motion that the players have, you know. It just has like all that energy put into those pieces.
And you like doing these reliefs, which are quite interesting. Tell me about the relief work, because I went to your last exhibition and you had a lot of reliefs.
Mm-hmm.
What does that afford you with the work that the aesthetic you're working with?
So this one was like the first of its kind, and it's like it's an oil painting on some wood, and then you have this resin part, which is the jaw, just to give it a different layer, and then you have all these wings on it, right? And I think I named that piece like something crazy, like a weaponized virus, right? So it's all these like these wings that look like you could have taken them off of a fighter jet. I have a lot of fun doing those pieces because, you know, there's sections that I paint that are flat, but they look a little three-dimensional, like the skull. But then, okay, so this piece right here, there's no painting in it.
Let's go back. I'll go back. Finish your thought.
Okay, it's the same. This one I painted onto. So a lot of them now, I'm starting not to add so much painting onto them and let the paintings do their own thing, because I really like playing with the shapes and playing with your eye without painting anything. Like that one was gonna be an eye painted on there, but all the layers that are on the eye are actually just pieces of wood. All of that is hand formed wood, and that's another piece of one of my eyes. But you know, it's crazy because I'll have it one way and then I'll turn it a different way and it looks like something completely different. And throughout the weeks of it being up in my studio, I might add another piece onto it or two, and right. I start to change it. So they're constantly evolving, you know. Like I might have a piece up for like a year, and then I'll decide to work on it again.
Right. That's what I like. That you're running with this theme, and you had this series of photographs with the shapes kind of floating in space and interacting. You stage these photographs with these kids?
Yeah, that series means a lot to me because it was not something that I planned, and I got really, really into it. This is like over a series of trips I was taking to Havana. You know, my family is Cuban, and I'm Cuban descent. I'm like first generation born here. So my grandfather was a photographer, and I have a lot of his original prints. So the first time I went back to Cuba, well, first time I went to Cuba, I always say go back, but I have never, wasn't even born there.
Yeah.
It was like a way for me to connect with him in a way because he already had passed away when I was younger. I have his
Abstract.
cameras, you know, so I was shooting with his lenses on my camera,
Yeah.
and all these people.
Abstract, let me interject. Hang on a second. Folks,
Yeah,
I'm hearing, are the images blurry on your end?
my end they're blurry. I'm hoping they're not
Yeah,
blurry on
okay.
yours.
You know what? I want to reboot because I don't want this. It would be terrible to have your images. It looks clear on my end, and I'm hearing that they're blurry. So I'm going to reboot, okay?
All right.
We'll be right back, folks.